Q&A. Chocolate lovers, there's a new culinary journey to discover New Zealand's best chocolate mousse. And Lucy Bendel is at the start line of this journey. Good morning, Lucy.
Good morning, team. That's right, the Mousse Masters final is on today. We've got some other finalists in the kitchen here whipping up their best mousse dishes. We're going to learn how you can turn this chocolate into some beautiful mousse after the break.
This is Mousse Masters, a competition run by Cacao to find the best chocolate mousse in New Zealand, using their couverture chocolate. The grand prize, a trip to Papua New Guinea to meet the cocoa growing community and experience the Cocoa of Excellence Awards. I was incredibly lucky to have made it to the grand finals, and I am taking you along for the ride with me. The day before the competition, I flew to Auckland and got myself settled into the hotel. The only thing we were required to make during the competition time was the mousse, so I had done some components in advance at home in Wellington. I was worried about my prep surviving the journey, but everything made it unscathed, including my delicate chocolate shells. After unpacking, I headed out in the lovely afternoon sun to get some of the perishable ingredients that I couldn't travel with, like milk and cream, then returned to the hotel to continue with my prep. Part of the competition brief was to be inspired by Papua New Guinea, where the cocoa for weave cacao is grown. Weaving is a huge part of the culture in Papua New Guinea, and I wanted to incorporate this into my dessert in a more subtle way. To do this, I used a Mont Blanc piping tip to pipe lines of chocolate cremeux out on sheets of baking paper. This created strands of cremeux that overlapped slightly, like pieces ready to be woven together. I had made my cremeux in Wellington, and I was having some issues with it getting stuck in the holes of the piping tip. I tried changing to a new piping tip, hoping that there were issues with the nozzle itself rather than just lumps in my cremeux, but I found the new tip was even worse. I scraped my cremeux off the paper and repiped it, and it came out much smoother the second time. I popped it in the freezer to set overnight before heading out for dinner with some friends. It is the night before the competition, here in Auckland in my hotel room. Just had an early dinner with some friends. It's like 20 to 9 and I'm ready for bed. Feel very anxious about tomorrow. I always feel anxious. I did manage to get some eggs in a real random container because I want to remake my cremeux in the competition. I brought one up with me and I piped it out here in my hotel room. I'm not super happy with just how it looks from piping. When I tested it initially, I made it, then immediately piped it. So I will take that one with me tomorrow just as a backup, and then I will make one during the competition. We have an hour and a half, which is not heaps of time. It's not like not enough time, but I'm a ball of walking anxiety at all times, especially in a competition and in a time limit in a strange kitchen, so I just want to be as prepared as possible. I'm trying to kind of approach it in that I'm just there to kind of learn from other people, see what other people are doing, meet some other pastry chefs and just have a good time, because there's so much other incredible talent there. Like, the chances of me winning are not high. So I'm just kind of happy to be here and just going to do my best and hope I don't embarrass myself. So yeah, I better go on my chef's jacket so that I don't look like a mess, and then I'm going to go to bed and get ready for tomorrow. Because I had most of my prep done, there wasn't a huge amount for me to do the morning of the competition. I used a round cutter to cut out rounds of my frozen cremeux and place them between sheets of baking paper so they wouldn't get stuck together, and then back in the freezer. Even though I was a bit unsure about my cremeux, I decided to take it as a backup in case the cremeux I made during the competition didn't freeze in time, which is exactly what ended up happening. I spent the rest of the morning exploring Ponsonby, where I was staying, which I didn't film, but I did manage to try the famous honey toast from Roo, which was delicious. Once I was back at the hotel, I packed up my gear and headed off to elemental cooking school. My stomach was full of butterflies. I was so anxious. At the venue, I unpacked my prep and equipment and started to meet the other competitors. I was so nervous, but I was sharing a bench with Ben from Embra, which is a restaurant in Taupo that I work with, so I felt a little bit better having a familiar face around. I was also feeling a little bit shy taking my camera out, so in the beginning you'll see the footage is mostly of Ben and I because I didn't feel bad filming him. Also, you'll see that Ben's dessert was insanely beautiful, like I wish I came up with it myself. In a competition called Mousse Masters, the mousse was obviously the most important element, so I got started on mine straight away. When I first designed this dessert, I had frozen the mousse in a sphere mold, then dipped it in the glaze. But I was worried about being able to get this done in the 1.5 hour cook time. Ahead of the competition, I decided to alter my dessert so that there was a chocolate shell holding the mousse, meaning that even if it didn't fully freeze in time, I would still have something to present. Whereas if I stuck with my original mousse construction, I would have nothing to show if the freezer wasn't strong enough. I used a ganache-based mousse, which is just using milk, cream, the chocolate and some gelatine because I really wanted the flavour of the chocolate to shine, and I find a ganache-based mousse is also really nice and light, which is something that was quite important for me. I filled my chocolate shells with the mousse and levelled them off with a palette knife before popping them in the freezer to set. While they chilled down, I made another chocolate cremeux in the hope it would come out a bit more consistently than the one I had brought with me. This cremeux turned out ridiculously smooth, and I piped it out with so much more ease than the previous one. I put that in the freezer to set and took my mousse spheres out. It was really important to me that with a dessert that was made to highlight chocolate, there needed to be some kind of acidity to cut through all the richness. So I filled the centre of the mousse with a passion fruit gel. In the original dessert, I had frozen the passion fruit in half sphere molds, then pressed the frozen passion fruit into the mousse. To account for the freezer time, I instead used a hot half teaspoon measure to scoop some of my set mousse out and then filled this with the passion fruit gel. I returned this to the freezer for as long as possible while I got my glaze ready. I had pre-made my glaze and heated it over a pot of simmering water to get the right consistency. I wanted to make sure when designing the dish that it only used weave cacao chocolate. So while I might normally have used a cocoa powder based glaze, I instead developed one that used just the weave cacao milk chocolate. This glaze was kind of halfway between a mirror glaze and a ganache, so it didn't have the extreme shine that a mirror glaze has, but it was really nice and pourable, so there would be just a thin layer. After reheating my glaze, it was a little bit too warm to use, so I set it aside to cool while I turned my mousse halves into spheres. Using a blowtorch to lightly melt the surface of the spheres, I stuck them together and then melted the base so they sat flat on the tray rather than rolling around. Because the freezer had been opened and closed so often, with multiple people using it, they hadn't set as much as I wanted, so they weren't sticking together to make the spheres absolutely perfect. I was getting a little bit stressed by this, but I tried to stay calm and I put them back in the freezer for as long as I could. While I was waiting for them to freeze, I had a walk around the kitchen and looked at what the other chefs were doing. It was so intimidating to see the incredible work everyone else was doing, but it was also really cool to chat with the other chefs and hear about what they had created. With 15 minutes left to go in the cook time, I placed my kind of frozen spheres on a cooling rack and began pouring the glaze over the top. It was a bit thinner than I would have liked, so I poured a second coat on top before sprinkling each sphere with some crystallized chocolate that I had made earlier. I was so relieved at this point, and I put my mousse in the fridge to chill until it was time to plate. There was a sphere left over that wasn't good enough to use, but I couldn't throw it away, so I offered it to Spirian and Mike, who were standing by our bench. Spirian is a cacao grower in Papua New Guinea. I didn't realize it then, but this was the first time he had ever tried chocolate mousse, and I am still so honoured that it was mine. Now that the cook time was up, we sat down for a cacao workshop with Una Brown, one of the founders of Weave Cacao, and Spirian. We got to taste the cacao that Spirian had grown, which was incredibly special to try it while talking to the person who had farmed it. Hearing from Spirian was absolutely fascinating. He talked about the bulk cocoa market and the boutique cocoa market. The bulk market is what the majority of cocoa farmers grow for. The buyers in the bulk market don't care at all about the quality of the beans, and they dictate the price that they will buy the cocoa at. Shockingly, I learned that while large chocolate companies that make up the bulk cocoa market have told us that cocoa prices have increased due to climate change and low crop yields, the prices have also increased because it was costing the farmers more to get their beans to the port to be shipped out than they were being paid by the bulk market. Because of that, the growers stopped sending their beans to port, therefore reducing the supply and causing a whole lot of cocoa to go to waste. This is one of the reasons that Sperian advocates for farmers in Papua New Guinea to start growing for the boutique market, where the price the growers are paid is consistent and the care for the quality of the beans is higher. Before this, I had also always understood that different chocolates had different fluidities due to the amount of cocoa butter in them. But I learned here that the fluidity is actually hugely affected by lecithin, which is the emulsifier used in chocolate making. Wheat cacao has no emulsifier at all, which is why it's a much thicker chocolate. I also want to note that I don't think emulsifier is something that's necessarily good or bad, it's just a choice this company has made. After this super informative session, the guests for the evening started to arrive. The wonderful chef Mark had made the most incredible selection of food for us to eat. Una and Sperian kicked off the evening with some speeches, and then it was time for judging. We plated up in groups with the student chefs going first. The student chefs were absolutely incredible, and I was honestly relieved that they were in their own category because they were killing it. We were being judged by Una, Sperian, Luke, who I've known for a while, and he is a chocolate nerd in the best way possible, cookbook author Amber Rose, and the one and only Peter Gordon. I have to say that Peter is the nicest and most encouraging man ever. He took the time to talk to every contestant before the evening began and is truly so encouraging of young chefs. He remembered me from a previous meeting, which was not something I would have expected, considering how many people and chefs he must meet on a daily basis. I was last in the round of plating, meaning I got to nervously watch all the other chefs plate the dishes. Everyone had such unique takes on the competition brief, and by this point I was feeling a little more comfortable with everyone, so I managed to get some more footage of them plating. While you watch everyone plate their stunning desserts, I will tell you a little bit more about what my dish was. We've already talked about the cremeux on the base of the plate, and on top of that was a banana cake, which holds the chocolate mousse sphere and the passion fruit gel. The idea of the flavours was the old chef saying, "What grows together goes together," and passion fruit and banana are often grown alongside cacao trees. I felt like the passion fruit tang would be perfect to counteract the richness of the chocolate, and the banana would be a lovely accent to those flavours without overpowering the chocolate. When it was almost time for my plating round, I took my cremeux out of the freezer to defrost on the plates. I ended up using the cremeux I had made at the hotel, as the one I made during the competition hadn't set firmly enough to peel off the baking paper. I was very nervous when it came time for me to finish off my dish. I only had one spare sphere and I wasn't completely happy with it, so I really didn't want to use it unless I absolutely had to. So I was super careful not to drop any, which is hard because I am so clumsy. I tried to cover up any imperfections in my glaze with a few pieces of crystallized chocolate and finished the desserts with a touch of flaky salt. It was annoying to me that you could see the seam of the two half spheres joining together on my dish, but other than that, I was really happy with what I produced. I feel like I represented myself well, and most importantly, I didn't embarrass myself. Finally, it was time to hear the results. Shania took home the student prize and Victorine took home the grand prize of the trip to Papua New Guinea, which was so well deserved for both of them. I've got a little vlog coming after this of my thoughts just after the competition, but it was truly such a special experience, which I am so thankful for. I just got back to the hotel. It's like 8:30. Quite tired. I feel like an old lady. But it was quite a long day, quite a big day. It was really good. I didn't win, but you know, it is what it is. I was really kind of worried about entering and embarrassing myself more than anything else. Like not doing a good job, and not kind of like showcasing myself. I think I used to do quite a lot of competitions when I was in cooking school, and I was always really anxious about them, but back then I kind of like, I didn't have anything, you know, I was just a student. Now I have a business and I have a cookbook, and like I feel like I have a, you know, like people think I'm good at this and they pay me money to teach them, so I want to prove that I'm good at this. And so it sucks to not win, obviously, but also that was such a cool experience. Like, I got to meet a cacao farmer. Like, that's wild. Like, that's not something that I've ever done. Got to hear about where it comes from in a way I've never heard before. Got to meet some really cool people. Got to talk to Peter Gordon, who is the nicest man on planet Earth. Like, he's just so encouraging of young chefs, incredible. Got to meet some people that I'm friends with on Instagram. To meet them in real life was really cool. So you know what, overall it was just really cool. I'm stoked to have been part of it. And now I'm gonna go to bed. Yeah, thanks for following along. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Alright, bye.